You walked into Mewgenics thinking, it's just another cute kitty game. And then the game slapped you in the face. Hidden synergies, decisions that seem small, and suddenly your run falls apart because of a silly detail. And that is exactly why today's video exists. I've separated 10 advanced tips that aren't just the basic of the basics. These are things that actually change how you build your team, how you manage risk, and how you stop losing runs due to a lack of planning. Some of these tips I only learned the hard way, testing, failing, and realizing that Mewgenics rewards those who play 2 steps ahead. So get comfortable. If you want to stop depending on luck and start controlling the chaos, let's get into the 10 advanced tips you need to know.
Let's go! All sing your highline with that.
If there's one thing I learned by getting beaten up in long runs, it's that leveling up isn't about picking the coolest button. It's about picking what will keep working for you when the game puts the pressure on. That's why I prioritize passives above all else. Direct attacks and active buffs give you that immediate feeling of power. But when the boss starts cornering you and combat turns into a marathon, what actually holds the run together are the effects that are constantly running in the background. Passives are what define broken builds because they multiply consistency, more sustain, more stability, more margin for error. And the secret here isn't just picking a passive. It's choosing combos that talk to each other. 2 sustain passives, for example, can transform a desperate fight into a controlled duel where you wear the boss down without being held hostage by RNG or perfect timing. Now, the painful part, ignoring early actives. I know, it's tempting to grab that ability that seems to solve your problems now, especially when you're still fragile. But my experience is that as the run grows, those actives start to feel small compared to what a strong foundation of passives does. They become decoration or situational buttons. While the passive keeps generating value every turn, in every exchange, in every mistake you almost make. So when that choice appears at level up, think like this. Will this still be good half an hour from now? If the answer is maybe, or only if I press it at the right time, I pass. I take the passive that fits the plan, stack synergy, and let the game do what it wants because the build is already working in my favor. You know that frustration of finally getting 2 cats with incredible stats, putting them to breed, and the kitten being a complete disappointment? I've lost count of how many promising lineages I ruined at the start because I completely ignored how the environment influenced genetics. The secret that changed my game wasn't finding better cats on the street, but turning the parents' room into a high-performance laboratory focused purely on stimulation. The golden rule here is to furnish your breeding rooms with items that maximize this attribute, and my favorite for this is the toxic waste barrel. It gives a massive +4 bonus to stimulation. Of course, putting a barrel of toxic waste in the bedroom doesn't seem very cozy, and it will tank the comfort, but for the moment of breeding, comfort is secondary. You need this hostile and stimulating environment to ensure the game stops rolling random dice and starts copying what matters. What happens under the hood is that high stimulation removes RNG from stat inheritance. If you have a father with Constitution 8 and a mother with 2, and the room stimulation is low, the game might give you any value, resulting in weak and random kittens. But with stimulation through the roof, the system is forced to inherit the highest value between the parents. It's the difference between having a kitten that can barely take a punch and creating a tank with 8 con guaranteed right at birth. So, stop treating house decoration merely as aesthetics or general comfort. Reserve a specific room, fill it with stimulation items, and use it exclusively as your cloning chamber for perfect stats. If you want to stop depending on luck and start building consistent builds for the hardest runs, controlling the furniture is just as important as controlling the combat. If there is a silent trap that can destroy an entire lineage without you noticing, it's inbreeding. I've fallen for the, just breed the best stats and you're good mindset, and before I knew it, I had a whole family that was strong on paper, but with defects that became a permanent anchor on performance. Once this happens, you get that feeling that the game is sabotaging you, when in reality, it was a lack of tree control. My rule from early on is as soon as possible, I make the donation of 10 kittens to Tink just to unlock the information that matters. When you can see the family tree, as well as indicators like libido and inbreeding percentage, you stop breeding in the dark and start making real decisions. It's not bureaucracy. It is literally the instrument panel of your genetics project. That's where the habit that saved me comes in. I separate parents and children into different rooms, always. I treat this as a safety protocol because in practice, if you leave everyone together and just breed on momentum, eventually you'll commit a family error by accident. And the worst part is that it's not a mistake you notice right away. It accumulates slowly until it becomes a huge problem. And the reason I'm so annoying about this is simple. These defects aren't just a temporary debuff. They permanently weaken stats and can ruin what you were trying to build. So this tip is less about optimizing and more about protecting your time. Monitor the lineage, use the indicators, and keep the house organized so you never breed relatives by accident. If you do this, your breeding starts to look like planning and not gambling. One of the things I like most about Mewgenics is that combat isn't just your build against the enemy. It's also you against the weather. And when you start seeing this, it feels like unlocking a secret advantage button. Some fights become much easier just because you read the weather before starting the turn and stopped equipping on autopilot. Rain, for example, is that condition I grew to love when a radical rat appears. If he depends on a fuse bomb to pressure you and the rain puts out the fuse, suddenly his entire attack package turns into nothing, and you gain time to reposition, heal, or focus the right target. I've seen confrontations that were turning into disasters change completely just because the map went into rain, and I stopped trying to trade damage as if it were a normal day. Now, storm is the other side of that coin. That's when I get much more conservative with metal equipment. If the game is warning you that conductivity will punish you, wearing metal in this scenario is like asking to take damage for free. And that kills runs in the most unfair way possible because you feel strong, until the weather reminds you that you are a walking battery. At these times, I prefer to lose a little defense and gain consistent survival, because storms don't forgive stubbornness. The habit I recommend making routine is simple. Before equipping anything, take a quick look at the map in the top right corner and confirm the combat weather. I treat this like checking ammo before opening a door. It takes 2 seconds and saves an entire fight. Do this microcheck always, and you'll notice you start building your strategy for the weather, not against it. One of my favorite wicked moves is when the game lets you transform crowd control into execution. Freeze and, right after, shatter to erase an enemy from the board. I like this type of synergy because it doesn't depend on a pretty crit. It depends on you seeing the right window and preparing the ground in advance. And yes, this is the part that separates a comfortable run from a run that becomes a walk in the park. The logic I follow is simple. I freeze the target that threatens me the most in the short term, usually whoever has burst or messes up your formation, and I save shatter as if it were a confirmation button. When it lands, it's that delicious feeling of, okay, one less problem, and suddenly the whole turn feels lighter. The detail is that you need to think about action, order, and resource economy, because wasting freeze on the wrong target hurts. Now, if you want a second layer of cruelty, enter the stack of thorns with taunt. I love when the enemy comes with that I'm going to focus the tank mentality, because then you turn their aggression into reflected damage, and every hit becomes payment with interest. In fights with many small attacks, this strategy feels like it multiplies the value of your turn because you are dealing damage while not attacking. And this is where the most important point of the tip comes in. This doesn't come out of nowhere. You plan it in level ups and collars so the kit works together, not as loose cards. Especially because Mewgenics heavily rewards those who think about build and synergy. And you can see this even in general game guides that reinforce the idea of planning instead of improvising every combat. If you have clerics holding heals while keeping freeze available to lock down the chaos, you create a safety loop that lets you choose when to accelerate with shatter And that kind of control becomes a combo that feels unfair in the right way. It took me a while to realize that sometimes the best equipment is precisely not equipping anything, keeping some cats collarless as if they were your plan B for utility. The feeling is great because you stop depending on a perfect collar for every situation and start carrying a survival kit that works in any long fight. And this fits very well with the game's vibe of making you plan outside of combat, not just react inside it. The trick is to abuse these zero mana skills paid with coins because they become a sustain engine when the boss decides the fight is going to last an eternity. I like to think of these cats as tactical support. They aren't the ones who will deal the beautiful damage of the run, but they are the ones who ensure everyone stays standing when RNG decides to test you. And when you aren't tied to a fixed collar, you can use the cat exactly for what it offers at that moment. In practice, I use 3 buttons as a routine. Vet Visit to maintain a constant heal, like 10 HP per turn. Buy Catnip when I need to push the mana bar back up, plus 10 mana. And Subway Ride to reposition and teleport for free when the map or the boss tries to corner you. The coolest part is how this changes your rhythm. You start spending mana with more courage on damage and control because you know you have a way to refill without needing to pray for a drop or a perfect turn. In long boss fights, this becomes a psychological advantage too, because you stop playing with fear. And the detail I always reinforce, it's not about leaving everyone collarless. It's about having a few like this, just like a good team has a reserve role. When you build this utility core, you ignore that pressure of, I need the right collar or the run is over, and start dictating the pace of the fight. If you test this once on a boss that drains your mana and time, it's hard to go back. The tip that saved my runs the most wasn't deal more damage. It was respecting the turn order. When you start thinking of combat as a queue, you stop wasting actions on a safe target and start cutting off the problem before it happens. I always do a little ritual. Hover the cursor over the enemies and read exactly what they're going to do, what the range is, and if there's anything that can wipe you off the map in one go. Then I prioritize killing or disarming whoever has the closest turn, because that is the guaranteed damage that will fall on your head if you ignore it. It seems basic, but it's the kind of discipline that turns an okay turn into a turn that wins the fight. After you've chosen the right threat, then comes the fun part. I force positioning to take advantage of backstabs and pushes. If your backstab gives that nice bonus, like plus 25% damage, great. But the real crime is using knockback to throw an enemy into a trap and immediately chain another kill. When it clicks, you aren't just killing, you are breaking the enemy's rhythm and cleaning the board efficiently. And the reason I like this style so much is that Mewgenics rewards this tactical eye for details all the time, even outside combat, since the house and furniture have bonuses and real impact on your progress. So I think like this, if I'm willing to micromanage a bedroom, I'm also going to micromanage the turn queue. Do this for a few runs, and you'll feel the game becomes less chaotic, because most disasters came from letting the next threat act for free. I love this idea of a fight club because it turns an average cat into an investment, not dead weight. Instead of waiting for a perfect drop or an absurd pedigree, you create an ugly, uncomfortable corner of the house just to put the crew to fight at night and slowly harvest growth. The trick here is to embrace controlled chaos, as if you were training a cheap army based on friction and repetition. In practice, I separate an attic, or any room I don't mind leaving horrible, and start stuffing it with furniture that drops comfort on purpose. Because the room needs to have the vibe of a clandestine basement, not a cute bedroom. The logic is simple. If the game already gives you tools to tweak attributes and environmental conditions per room via furniture, I use that aggressively and functionally, not decoratively. Then I group the 6 out of 10 cats there, those who aren't the stars of the team but don't deserve to be discarded either, and let the nightly fights do the dirty work. What I enjoy about this strategy is that it creates emergent stories. A cat you didn't bet on becomes the champion of the room. Another that looked promising gets beaten up and forces you to rethink your build, positioning, and even who goes to the front line and runs. And the best part is that this fits perfectly when you are trying to level up volume. Instead of spending fine resources on your best ones, you use the Fight Club as a sieve and a gym at the same time. For me, the mistake here is wanting comfort and efficiency in the same room. I prefer to have a beautiful room for those who will rest and a horrible room for those who will learn to win by getting beaten. Because the house in Mewgenics is a tool for progression, not just decoration. After you've already unlocked the basic kit, I really think hard routes become the best way to accelerate your account. I like to view this as an investment. You take more of a beating, but each run starts to yield more practical experience, more build testing, and more chances to walk out with something that changes your next cycle. The mistake for me is trying to force a hard route in the early game just because you can. In that beginning, you still lack consistency. Your team breaks easily, and the run turns into a casino where you lose time instead of gaining rhythm. I prefer using the safer routes to stabilize, get essential unlocks, and only then raise the risk level. From there, hard routes start to shine, especially if your focus is farming positive mutations, because you put yourself in more situations that pressure your team and force you to extract value from synergies. I usually go in with a clear goal, like I want to test this control core, or I want to validate sustain and use the challenges as a filter. If the setup holds up there, it will hold up anywhere. When it works, it gives you that feeling that you are piloting the progression, not being carried by luck. And I like this philosophy because it matches how the game rewards you for thinking about meta progress and structure outside of fights. The house, rooms, and preparation truly matter in your performance over the runs. So in practice, my recommendation is avoid hard routes early. Use them when your unlocks already give you solid ground, and treat every difficult route as part of the evolution plan for your army, not as a test of courage. When I want to make a run unfair in my favor, I stop thinking of a skill as a pretty button and start thinking of a skill as class identity. Mewgenics heavily rewards those who plan the team with intention, including in preparation outside of combat. So it makes sense for you to build your kit around a few absurd choices that carry the fight. And that's where this list of top skills per class comes in, which I use as a North Star when I want to get overpowered quickly. On the tank, Steel Skin is that type of skill that changes your posture instantly. You stop playing with fear and start inviting a fight. A turn with Brace, way up there, the kind like plus 99 for one turn, as people say, gives you the license to tank the enemy's worst attack, protect the rest of the squad, and still gain time for your win condition to appear. I especially like this in fights where the enemy has a predictable damage spike, because you turn the main threat into a wasted turn for them. On the mage, Ice aspect is the complete package for me. Ice immunity with damage spreading in the right way, so you can play area of effect without sabotaging yourself when the field turns into chaos. And if you let me choose a defensive, offensive wickedness at the same time, it's the Cleric with Breath of Life. Because auto-revive tied to a heal is that safety net that makes you stay aggressive even when the fight goes off script. This duo creates a sense of control. You freeze and pressure, and if things go wrong, you don't collapse completely. And on the Necro, Eternal Servitude is the skill that gives me that laugh of, okay, now the game is mine, because resurrecting an enemy as an ally becomes a domino effect. I use this to flip the numbers, break formation, and gain an extra body to block a corridor, pull aggro, or just increase the volume of actions on my side. In the end, the most important advice is to adapt to your squad. If you already have sustain, maybe you want more control. If you lack a front line, prioritize the wall. And if you are winning, but slowly, grab the skill that turns advantage into a quick finish.